Chapter 41-52. Sang Liang sat there without moving, worry could be seen on his face. After sitting there for a long time, he picked up his book and left. A spirit ran over to Sang Liang and said, "Master, the person locked up is going crazy again, we can't suppress him this time." Sang Liang spat out a breath of air, his voice was cold as ice. "Let's go and take a look." Sang Liang came to the front of the cage was imprisoning the black smoke, and now, the black smoke was rampaging around, knocking the entire cage to the point of tilting left and right. Clanging sounds could be heard, the noise was endless. Sang Liang was not in a good mood. He looked at the black smoke coldly and said to the people beside him, "Increase the punishment." His subordinates immediately went to prepare. The array formation under the cage was lit up, and lightning struck the bottom of the cage. The purple lightning was as thick as a baby's arm, and accurately struck the black smoke's body. The black smoke immediately let out a miserable shriek. It trembled and tried its best to avoid the purple lightning, but the cage was only so big, and the lightning struck the black smoke's body without any wastage. Crackling sounds could be heard, all sorts of lightning flashed, and after striking for at least half an hour, the black smoke was frightened, and even the black smoke became smaller. The black smoke clenched its teeth. "How dare you do this to me? Granduncle's lackey is really good." Sang Liang was expressionless. "Strike again." The black smoke was so angry that he could not speak. He shouted hatefully, "I, your father, have always been unable to understand, on what basis do you all treat me so righteously? Previously, when you said you wanted to kill me, you killed me, and now when you say you want to imprison me, you imprison me, and when you say you want to torture me, you torture me." Sang Liang walked into the cage, looked at the roaring black smoke, and said solemnly, "I have always been unable to understand, why would the Sea of Law give birth to two protectors, and what is even more puzzling is that one of the protectors, other than absorbing the power of the Sea of Law, does nothing else. Sometimes, it was not easier to do things with more people. One monk fetched water to drink, 2 monks carried water to drink. If you had cut off your connection with the Sea of Law earlier, maybe the situation in the Sea of Law would have been better." Black Fog sneered, his laughter was filled with ridicule and disdain. "So what if the Sea of Law gave birth to me? Are you speaking up for Granduncle? I was the one who forced him to do all these things. I was the one who pushed everything to him. He was clearly the one who did all these things. When it came to the end and he had to suffer, he blamed me for not doing anything. These things are all done by Granduncle, so it's only right for him to ask me to pay the price. It's because the Sea of Law gave birth to me, and it's the Sea of Law that gave birth to me. It's not like it was Granduncle who gave birth to me." The black fog floated in the cage. Lightning crackled on its body, and this lightning consumed the black fog. Sang Liang coldly said, "People like you don't know anything. You don't know what others have done. You only care about enjoying yourself, and when it's your turn, you're shouting that it's unfair. What right do you have to despise Senior Uncle? Let's not talk about what Senior Uncle has done. People like you probably just spend your family's money and feel that you have no freedom. You're like this. If it weren't for Senior Uncle, I would have killed you long ago." Sang Liang's voice was filled with killing intent. This killing intent blurred his eyebrows, making him look like a killing god. The black fog's voice was even more disdainful. "You want to kill me? You're treating Senior Uncle as your master. If I tell you to do it, you'll do it. A thing like you, a lowly person, is not worthy of talking to me." Sang Liang's expression was indifferent. "A lowly person like me can kill you. Do you believe that if I kill you, Senior Uncle won't say anything? However, at that time, you won't know anything, because you'll have disappeared. Senior Uncle has left. He won't be back for a long time." The black fog laughed. "I really should let Senior Uncle take a look at his lackey. You're really fucking sick. It's my business to do whatever I want to do. Why is it right for Granduncle to do what he does, while what I do is wrong?" They were attacking him as a person. It was his freedom to choose what kind of life he wanted to live. Sang Liang said, it's your freedom to choose what kind of life you want to live. But you're absorbing the energy of the Sea of Law, and at the same time, you want to live the life you want to live. You cut off your connection with the Sea of Law, and you're free. You can do what you want to do, and become the person you want to be. Black Fog laughed even more. That laughter was full of disbelief, mockery, and contempt. So, only those who do things like Granduncle deserve to live. If I don't do it, then I deserve to die. It's a sin for me to live. When one day, someone thinks that you're wasting air by living, so you deserve to die, how does that feel? They would let you die as if it was right and proper. It's just that you don't have any achievements, just because you're wasting air. The Black Fog felt that he wasn't a person, but an object to be casually dealt with. Even the reason was so unimaginable and perfunctory. You're simply sick. Since the Sea of Law gave birth to me, then I share energy with the Sea of Law. What right do you have to attack me? Did I share energy with you? Simply ridiculous. The Black Fog said, when you're fighting injustice for Senior Uncle, you should be clear that it wasn't I who asked Senior Uncle to do these things. Now, you're acting like you've done a lot, as if I'm indebted to you. Get lost. Don't fucking criticize me, especially someone as despicable as you. Facing the Black Fog's insult, Sang Liang's expression did not change. He still looked at the Black Fog in the cage coldly. You've done your duty. Others have done what you should do, but in your mouth, I didn't ask them to do it. How can a person like you be born in the Sea of Law? The Black Fog sneered, it's my freedom to be who I want to be. Sang Liang said, the Sea of Law gave birth to you. Some responsibilities existed from birth, and would never change. The Black Fog said, even if the Sea of Law wants me to die, it's not your turn to make a move. You better kill me. One day, with a blade in my hand, all of you will die. The Black Fog's voice was filled with killing intent. Sang Liang said to the guard, give me another half an hour. With that, he left. The array formation under the cage became brighter and brighter, condensing many purple lightning bolts that struck the cage. The surroundings were bright flashes of light. Sang Liang left step by step. His footsteps were steady, like a noble young master, strolling in the bloody ground. His appearance was as though he was stepping on a lotus. Amidst the bright flashes of lightning, there were wails mixed within the rumbling, and the wails became weaker and weaker. Creak, the door isolated the sound from the inside. Sang Liang left the dark place. Chapter 41-53. After the deity striking whip absorbed the fresh blood, Ning Shu stood guard by the side. Fa Tian did not wake up, but the speed at which he absorbed the energy was much faster, and soon there was a pile of powder next to him. At this rate of absorption, Ning Shu felt that the energy in her body would not be able to last until Fa Tian woke up. At this time, it was up to the Origin King. She had already exchanged a lot of soul force, so she could exchange for energy from the Origin King. She was just a middleman, making a little profit. Seeing that Fa Tian had no intention of waking up, Ning Shu no longer stood guard. The blood could not provide Fa Tian with energy, but it could make Fa Tian wake up faster and shorten the time. Fa Tian had been asleep for too long, so Ning Shu became more and more nervous, worried that Fa Tian would not wake up. As for whether Sang Liang had tampered with the blood, Ning Shu felt that it should not be. After all, she was no longer like before, where she could just casually fool around. Now, Ning Shu could beat people up, and her destructive power was much stronger than before. Once she made a scene, the situation would not be easy to deal with. Although Fa Tian was still asleep, he was still a weapon and could still use his most basic abilities. Ning Shu could take the whip and go find trouble. The Origin King in Dong Qian returned, and the Origin King also brought back some souls, obviously wanting to make these souls his subordinates. Ning Shu looked at these young souls, frowned, and asked coldly, where did you find these souls? Dong Qian was really afraid of Ning Shu. Although he hated her in his heart, seeing her expression made him uneasy. He was really scared of her. When she was alive, she tortured him, and after she died, she still tortured him. These souls were all young and strong, wearing suits and ties, looking like the elites of society at first glance. If one of them was like this, then all of them would be like this. I don't object to you going into the small world to find people, but don't you think it's a bit too much to kill people and then capture their souls? When Dong Qian heard this, if it wasn't for his lack of strength, he would have spat at her. Didn't you kill me just like that? Kill me and bring me to this damned place. Fighting for justice for others at this time was too disgusting. Why was he pretending to be a good person at this time? Dong Qian didn't say anything. Moreover, it wasn't his turn to speak at this time, so he stood aside obediently. Su Wang said, "Of course I'm looking for the elites of society." Ning Shu chuckled. "He's alive and well. Killing him and then capturing his soul. How stupid. The Origin King should have played in the mud for a few more years, but now he was being encouraged by Dong Qian to go to the small world to kill people and capture souls, even if it was not instigated by Dong Qian. Ning Shu also knew that with the Origin King's intelligence, he only knew that there was someone in the small world. Ning Shu glanced at Dong Qian. Even if the Origin King lived for another 100 years, he might not be as smart as Dong Qian. It was instigated. Dong Qian quickly denied it. When immortals fought, they couldn't implicate a little brat like him. No, I was just following orders. It has nothing to do with me, really. Seeing Ning Shu like this, the Origin King was particularly impatient. What's going on? I'm just doing something, but there's so much trouble. Ning Shu said bluntly, because you're stupid, stupid beyond belief. Even if you're stupid, you still think you're infallible. Even if you're strong and casually end someone's life, the karma of the small world may not be much to you, but this karma is still on you. It was not a big deal for void creatures to casually destroy a world, but it was different if they entered a small world. Entering a small world, the small world would reject them, but it would also place a part of the karma on them. Ning Shu said, "Did you know that in addition to the small world, there is also a world called the reincarnation world? There are only souls inside." The Origin King was scolded badly by Ning Shu. He touched his nose and whispered, "I know. Why don't you go to the reincarnation world to look for souls? There are ancient, modern, and even supermodern interstellar souls there. Only people with talent can be found." The Origin King said, "Wouldn't it be too troublesome to look for them one by one?" The Origin King knew about the reincarnation world, but there were so many souls inside. Did he have to ask them one by one if they were in the construction industry? Ning Shu looked at the Origin King with increasingly indifferent eyes. He deeply doubted the Origin King's IQ and wondered if the Origin King could really set up a grassroots team. Experience needed to be accumulated over time, but the Origin King was the kind of person who thought he was infallible. If such a fool became the Void King, Ning Shu felt that the Void would be done for. The Origin King was originally confident, but under Ning Shu's gaze, he became weaker and weaker. In the end, he wanted to shrink into a ball, but his mouth was still very stubborn. "If worst comes to worst, I'll just send them back." Dong Qian raised his head and glanced at the Origin King, then lowered his head again, not saying a word. Ning Shu sighed. "Just by being a little more careful, you can find connections. I've taken them to the reincarnation world twice before. Not to mention my connections there, they can find any kind of soul they want. Not to mention the organization's connections. Remember the black-haired dog? He's the guardian of the reincarnation world. You can go find him as long as you give him some reward. The souls in the reincarnation world are all dead. This is their destiny. If you give them different opportunities and worlds in the reincarnation world, they may be grateful. Just look at what you're doing now. You kill people, they're living well, but suddenly die, and you want them to be loyal? Are you more shameless than others? Even if the organization was a tyrannical place, they would only accept people who were either dead or alive. Ning Shu deeply felt that it was a mistake to keep Dong Qian by the Origin King's side. Dong Qian could definitely fool the Origin King. The Origin King naturally knew that he had been a little careless in this matter, but being rebuked by Ning Shu so bluntly, he was particularly unhappy. Fine, fine, fine. Ning Shu snorted, go do whatever you want, don't hang around in front of me, and don't come looking for me in the future. I'm too lazy to care about such things. Our deal is over. Take your people and leave. Although the Origin King was annoyed by Ning Shu, he had never thought of leaving Ning Shu. I'll just send the soul back. Is there a need to be so angry? Ning Shu's heart was now as calm as still water. He always felt that the Origin King had some kind of relationship with him. After all, in her heart, the Origin King was just an old man who peed his pants and played with mud, but his heart was big, but he couldn't handle things. His heart was higher than the sky, but his ability was ordinary. If the Origin King didn't lie and said that a voice told him to become the Void King. Ning Shu felt that the person who spoke to the Origin King definitely had a grudge with him. Chapter 41-54. Nagging him every day was the same as saying in front of a child, this is right, that is also right. It was simply raising a child to become a waste. The Origin King actually took these words seriously. Ning Shu had wanted to build infrastructure before, so be it. In any case, he would not be able to get anything out of it. After all, void creatures did not need transportation, nor did they need to build roads and bridges. As for living in a house, that was nonsense. There were thousands of species, and each race had a different body shape and habits. If a group of powerful species got together, when they fought, the house would be torn down in minutes. People lived in houses because they were about the same size, and it was not like they would beat people up if they did not agree. Every race had their own secrets and habits, and some races were even born enemies. When they got together, it would be a disastrous scene. Moreover, there were so many races that building a house like a block of tofu might not be suitable. A method that was suitable for humans might not be suitable for void creatures. If the Origin King wanted to make trouble, he could do it as if he had something to do. In Ning Shu's opinion, doing this kind of thing was no different from playing with mud. Since he was willing to spend money to play, Ning Shu was willing to accompany him for the energy bodies. But now, he had no brain and was being led by the nose. This was the most deceptive thing, being led by the nose to a small world to kill people. It was clearly something that could be solved in the Transmigration world. He despaired of the Origin King's IQ. The Origin King saw that Ning Shu did not speak and immediately took these souls away. Ning Shu snorted, if the Origin King returned, these people might have already turned into ashes. Of course, Ning Shu would not say such things. Let him run, perhaps the Origin King did not even remember the people he caught in that small world and could not find it. After all, it was not so easy to find a special leaf on a tree. Dong Qian wanted to go with the Origin King, but Ning Shu stopped him. Stay. Dong Qian immediately said, I did not persuade Sir properly. I should deal with the aftermath together with Sir. Dong Qian looked at the Void King with pleading eyes. Take me away, if I stay, I will definitely suffer. The Origin King naturally wouldn't go against Ning Shu, and it wasn't a big deal for Dong Qian to stay, so he said, let's stay. Dong Qian's soul trembled. That one sentence had decided his fate. He lowered his head, hid the emotions in his eyes, and stood there without moving. Clearly, as long as he said that they should go together, he wouldn't have to face the demoness alone, but he didn't say it. Like duckweed, he could only drift along with the current, and he could be overturned at any moment. As soon as Su Wang left, Dong Qian very sensibly knelt down and said to Ning Shu, I was wrong. Ning Shu reached out his hand and pressed it against Dong Qian's soul. Dong Qian was scared out of his wits, but he was powerless to resist. He could only feel something flowing away from his body. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a lot of gold nuggets in Ning Shu's hands. the Origin King said that these gold nuggets were good for the soul. Now that they were suddenly taken away, Dong Qian felt it was a pity. Before, when they gave them to him, they didn't ask for his opinion, so he was very unhappy. But now that they took them back, Dong Qian was very reluctant and unhappy, and even felt a bit of heartache. They gave them and took them back. They were simply playing with him. Ning Shu put the merit on the table and said to Dong Qian, I know you don't want to stay here and bear a grudge in your heart. Let him go now and let him go to the afterlife. As for these things, they weren't meant to be. If these merits were on Dong Qian and let him go to the afterlife, these merits would be enough for Dong Qian to be reborn into a noble family. With what Dong Qian had done, he was only worthy of being a beast. Taking away his merits would inevitably take away some of his soul force, and with the soul cleansing in the afterlife pool, Dong Qian might not even be able to be a human in his next life. Leaving him by the Origin King's side to stir up trouble was completely her finding things to do. Dong Qian immediately said, I don't bear a grudge. I'm willing to serve His Excellency and cut through all obstacles for him. People were so contradictory. If they let Dong Qian go, he wouldn't be willing to leave. He bore a grudge against the people who forced him to stay. He wanted to leave, but when he really left, he couldn't bear to see the new world. He didn't want to be a human again, and he didn't know anything in his next life. Perhaps he was from a poor family, unable to eat his fill, and even uncertain of his gender. In any case, Dong Qian didn't want to become a woman. People who could establish the PUA group treated women as objects. Pray, one day, he would become an object he despised. That feeling was terrible. Dong Qian was very disappointed. Previously, when he saw them fighting over him, it gave him a huge illusion that he was very important. The shame of being fought over was like fighting over an object, but now that they didn't want it, the feeling was even more humiliating. Abandoning him was more like abandoning an object, an old and useless object. Being abandoned because he was no longer needed was even more humiliating than being fought over. Now, Dong Qian's heart was very complicated. Anyway, for now, it was better to stay. He still wanted to say something, but Ning Shu directly stretched out his hand to stop him. Stop, don't talk to me. I'm too lazy to listen, and I'm too lazy to do anything. Dong Qian was very desperate. He had never seen such a female devil. You have to listen to my explanation. Ning Shu, I'm too lazy to listen. I just want to feel, don't feel, that's all. Dong Qian, fuck 18 generations of ancestors. Not long after, the Origin King came back with his soul. He looked at Ning Shu very awkwardly. I can't find that small world. Ning Shu chuckled. Follow me. This is the last time I wipe your ass. I won't care about you anymore. Ning Shu found the birthplace of Go Zi. He tore open the bit wall and entered the world of reincarnation. Go Zi stuck out his tongue and panted rapidly. He was like a hot dog, sticking out his tongue and breathing out, if you tear me apart like this, you'll lose me as a friend. Ning Shu said, friends should be tolerant of each other. Go Zi didn't listen. He directly asked, why are you looking for me? She wouldn't come for no reason, she definitely wasn't here for anything good. Ning Shu, I do have something to do, but I don't need your help. Ning Shu looked back at the Origin King with a very cold expression. Why aren't you releasing your souls? The Origin King was so scared that he released a few souls while trembling. Ning Shu turned to talk to Go Zi with a smile. Her change of expression made the Origin King feel a lingering fear. Chapter 41-55. When the souls were released, each and every one of them had a blank and dull look on their faces. They did not know anything and did not dare to ask anything. Some people's expressions changed as they looked at the Origin King with fear and hatred in their eyes. Obviously, they remembered what happened before they died. No matter who it was, if they were suddenly killed, it was simply a disaster that fell from the sky. Ning Shu said to Go Zi, put these souls in your reincarnation world and let them enter reincarnation. There was only reincarnation, what else could be done? The Origin King could not find the small world, and even if he found it, these souls would not return to their bodies. After such a long time, even if their corpses did not rot, they would have turned into ashes. This was not a big deal, so Go Z agreed without thinking, okay. Ning Shu turned his head and said to the Origin King with a cold expression, then why don't you give some compensation for killing them? The Origin King asked reflexively, what compensation? Ning Shu said, give them some merit so they can live better in their next life, but don't give them too much. Otherwise, it would affect the small world. The Origin King nodded and gave each soul a merit point. 1 merit point was not a small amount, at least 1,000 merit points. How many good deeds did one have to do to have so much merit points? This compensation was not bad, however, there were still some people who were unwilling. They had finally grown up and had their own lives, but now they were killed. Just giving them some random things would be enough. They clamored for an explanation, and some wanted to go back. If they could go back, they would have done so long ago. The Origin King did not dare to make a scene in front of Ning Shu, but facing these ant-like creatures, his attitude was absolutely ferocious. Make a scene, my ass, do you believe I won't destroy your souls? These souls trembled in fear. Some of them could not withstand the Origin King's attack and even their souls became weaker, not daring to speak. Even if these people wanted justice, it was impossible, because the Origin King's strength was simply too much stronger than theirs. This kind of grievance was probably caused by a rich second generation who hurt ordinary people, and the rich second generation threw money to compensate them. Anyone would feel insulted, but justice was so difficult. In front of Ning Shu, the Origin King did not dare to be so rude, and cruel. In the face of these people's crusade, the Origin King had directly used enough strength to kill them, leaving them speechless. Therefore, everyone had to climb up and didn't want to be stepped on. Ning Shu stared at the Origin King. The Origin King took a deep breath, took out some virtue, and stuffed it into the hands of these souls. Take it. Although I'll kill you, you'll definitely have a good life in your next life. The souls were infuriated. Do I have to thank you for killing me? This was too much of a bully. However, what could he do in the face of such a brutal and terrifying power? He would only die if he tried to resist it. In the end, he was scared out of his wits. He still couldn't get the justice he wanted. Unless he could beat him, things in the world were just that messed up. The Origin King gave each of them a merit. When it was Dong Qian's turn, Ning Shu said, no need to give it to him. Dong Qiando's outstretched hand stopped just like that. In the end, he withdrew his hand and clenched it into a fist behind his back, tightly clenched. Dong Qian's face was very respectful, but he was very anxious in his heart, like bubbling magma, going to the next life. Absolutely not. He didn't want to go. What would he become in his next life? A woman, a beast, or even a bug with a very short lifespan. This woman wouldn't let him follow the Origin King. He wasn't the one who killed these people, it was the Origin King who did it. It was the Origin King who was looking for talents. Why was it all on his head? It was obviously the Origin King who did all these bad things, but she acted as if it was the people around the Origin King who led her astray. Fuck. She acted like a little girl, but who knew what kind of old monster was inside? His biggest mistake was that he didn't have the strength of these people, he didn't have the strength to surpass them. No matter how much Dong Qian disliked the Origin King in his heart and hated Ning Shu, he still needed to rely on the Origin King. He pleaded to the Origin King, Sir, I want to stay by your side and serve you. The Origin King didn't know that Dong Qian was going to be thrown here and said casually, of course you'll follow me. With someone by his side, the Origin King felt that it was quite good. Dong Qian knew a lot and would tell him stories when he was free, as well as some things about the small world. The Origin King felt that he still needed such a person. He was used to having a follower, so without him, he felt a little uncomfortable. Ning Shu, he'll stay here and die. The Origin King let out a cry and said with a bitter face, that's not good. Ning Shu, there's nothing bad about it. Just listen to me, listen to me. Dong Qian, fuck your 18 generations of ancestors. The Origin King was still struggling, but there's no one by my side. There are many people in the small world. Find someone more suitable, Ning Shu said. Even if you want to find someone, you should find someone with a better heart. Dong Qian, you're the one with a bad heart. In terms of heart, Dong Qian felt that this old monster was the most brutal. The Origin King couldn't win against Ning Shu, so he still took out a piece of merit and gave it to Dong Qian, then give him some reward. After all, he followed me for a while. Ning Shu didn't say anything. The Origin King stuffed a piece of merit into Dong Qian's hand. Take it. Dong Qian's pupils trembled as he looked at the merit in his hand. Then, he glanced at the Origin King. The merit melted in his palm. However, compared to the merit on Dong Qian's body, it was just a drop in the ocean. Dong Qian had given him a lot of merit before, but he didn't feel anything in his heart. He even felt hatred and disgust. However, this time, Dong Qian had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was very complicated, with mixed feelings. One moment, he mocked the Origin King for being an idiot who had nothing but powerful abilities. The next moment, he felt a little sour. Ning Shu didn't stop the Origin King from giving Dong Qian the merit. If the Origin King wanted to give it to Dong Qian, then so be it. She was too lazy to care. The Origin King's actions really made Dong Qian look weak and despicable. These souls had fused with merit. Go Zi exhaled at these souls and blew them away, including Dong Qian. Even if Dong Qian didn't want to leave, he couldn't stand still under this kind of power. His souls were scattered all over the reincarnation world. If he wanted to reincarnate, he would have to go to the reincarnation pool. Ning Shu picked up Go Zi and patted his head quickly. Thank you so much. Ning Shu said to the Origin King, he helped me, so give him a gift. The Origin King nodded and took out an energy ball. Ning Shu took it and stuffed it into Go Zi's mouth. This is the energy of the void. You can try to absorb it. It should be able to change your physique. Go Zi gulped and swallowed the energy ball. I collected some fruits. Go eat some. Okay, I still have something I need your help with later, Ning Shu said. Chapter 41-56. Go Zi treated Ning Shu very warmly. They were slowly becoming bad friends, and their words became more and more impolite. Go Zi kept giving Ning Shu the middle finger, and Ning Shu gave it back without hesitation. After staying in the small world for a while, Ning Shu didn't believe that Go Zi didn't understand the meaning of giving the middle finger. Go Zi took out black fruits to treat Ning Shu and the Origin King. Ning Shu ate the sweet fruit and said to Go Zi, help me find a soul that can repair a house. He believed that Go Zi could find one, and he should be able to know where the soul was when it was alive. Go Zi had blessed souls before. If he didn't know where the soul was when it was alive and casually blessed, what if he blessed a soul that had committed a heinous crime? Blessings weren't so cheap, and Go Zi couldn't just randomly choose a soul. Go Zi didn't refuse, but asked, is it urgent? Ning Shu shook his head. It's not urgent. Take your time. It's best if it's someone with rich experience. Sorry to trouble you. Okay. Go Zi nodded. I'll pay attention. If I meet such a soul, I'll keep it for you. Ning Shu patted Go Zi's head again. Thank you. Go Zi was very unhappy, especially when he stuck out his tongue. He almost bit it off. If you keep patting me, I'll lose friends. Ning Shu said, friends should be tolerant of each other. When they met a few masters of samsara, only Go Zi was close. After all, the little devil had always been with this lord and was brought up by him. It was normal that he wasn't close to her. After leaving the world of samsara, the atmosphere between Ning Shu and the Origin King was very awkward. Ning Shu didn't really want to talk to the Origin King, and the Origin King didn't know what to say. The Origin King said to Ning Shu, I'm going out for a while. Ning Shu said, "Go ahead. You don't need to tell me where you're going." Strictly speaking, they didn't have any relationship. The Origin King touched his nose and said, "Oh," and then left. Ning Shu returned home to cultivate. He needed to forge his meridians. Although the main meridians had already appeared, there were still many unclear side meridians that had yet to be formed. If her meridians were exposed, she would definitely be more powerful than she was now. To be honest, he wanted to look for Sang Liang again. If he could get some blood and put it beside him to smell, he felt that his cultivation speed would be faster. As for drinking blood, Ning Shu had never thought of drinking it, especially Sang Liang's blood. According to Sang Liang's black-hearted nature, he always felt that Ning Shu's blood was poisonous. He had a psychological barrier when he drank it. She was simply overthinking things. She didn't even have blood, yet she was complaining that it was poisonous. She would not go to the organization for the time being. If she kept going there might be a trap waiting for her. He had just taken some blood from Sang Liang, so he had to stop for a while. Ning Shu calmed his heart and began to cultivate. Increasing his strength was very important. Just look at how tolerant Sang Liang was of him right now. It feels so good to be strong, but who the hell was Sang Liang? The grand-uncle was also very steady. He had been with Sang Liang all the time, and he actually managed to hold himself back from biting down. Was it disdain? Was he so powerful that he didn't want to bite Sang Liang? Or was it because he had a good relationship with Sang Liang that he didn't want to bite a subordinate who was loyal to him? In this regard, Ning Shu could only cover his nose and give a thumbs up. You're strong. If it was Ning Shu, although he wouldn't bite Sang Liang, he still wanted to suck his blood. This was a dim world. There was no light, and the darkness was wriggling under the darkness. Those strange races were unaffected by the darkness. They wriggled, crawled, and crawled towards places with light. They seemed to have merged with the darkness, or perhaps they were darkness to begin with. The places they crawled past were swallowed up inch by inch, turning into endless darkness. Wherever there was light, it was what they desired. They were like moths to a flame, rushing towards the light. However, it wasn't the moths that died. Instead, it was the light that was annihilated. It was a majestic city with specks of light. There were voices of people talking, and it was full of vitality. The darkness surged faster, covering them inch by inch. Behind them was already darkness, becoming a part of them. It was getting closer and closer, closer and closer, and it was about to touch the city. With a bang, a dazzling light suddenly erupted above the city, causing the darkness to stop in its tracks. The darkness continued to move forward. The darkness was irresistible. It was as if darkness had descended after the sun had set. The city became brighter and brighter, illuminating the darkness. The edges of the darkness retreated. Even the light couldn't penetrate the thick darkness. One side was bright and dazzling, while the other side was dark and boundless. There was a sharp contrast at a certain junction. There were people standing on the city wall. The light was too bright, and their faces couldn't be seen clearly. They only felt that it was extremely dazzling. Looking at the overwhelming darkness, the people on the city wall said, "They're swallowing faster and faster." In the past, the Qianshan realm was very big. Now, half of it had been swallowed, and the other half was forever shrouded in darkness. After being shrouded in darkness, some creatures never came out. No one knew if they were alive, dead, or turned into darkness. In the past, the darkness was just a small black dot, the size of a fingernail. No one would pay attention to it. Later, the darkness grew bigger and bigger, and the area it was swallowing became bigger and bigger. It was swallowing slowly at a neither fast nor slow speed. Immediately, someone organized a group to open up the Qianshan realm and trap the darkness in it. According to the speed at which the darkness was swallowing, the entire void would be swallowed sooner or later. The void would be engulfed in darkness, and there would be no living creatures. No one knew why this happened, but the darkness was something that needed to be guarded against. Grand Uncle, should we abandon the city? The darkness has already swallowed this place. Someone asked the Grand Uncle. The Grand Uncle looked at the thick darkness in the distance. It was pure darkness, not evil, and there was no aura of living creatures. But it was this kind of darkness that had swallowed the entire void. If this was the change between day and night in the void, no one knew what the void would be like when it was shrouded in darkness. Would they still be alive? They had once put a living creature in there, but after that, there was no more contact. No one knew what was in the darkness. Because of ignorance, they were afraid. They were afraid of the arrival of the darkness, so they tried their best to control the speed at which the darkness was swallowing. The grand uncle had also put in some high-tech things, but the feedback he got was darkness. There was nothing, no sound, no living creatures, nothing. But it was also certain that when the darkness shrouded the entire void, the void would become a part of the darkness. Perhaps the void would be restored to light, but everything that had happened before would be pushed back, as if it had been washed away by water. All traces would disappear. Chapter 4157. In the past, more than half of the Qianshan realm had been devoured. Of course, it would take a long time. Even if the darkness wanted to devour the entire void, it would take a long time. There were so many voids, and the Qianshan realm was just a small corner that had been surrounded. However, this darkness was not evil, but it made people tremble in fear. The darkness devoured everything. If the darkness was unstoppable, then it would take a little longer to come. To put it bluntly, even if the Grand Elder was dead, the darkness would not be able to devour the entire void. However, when they saw the menacing darkness, they could not help but be afraid. The people next to the Grand Elder said, "It won't be long before the city is devoured. Let's move back." The city was about to be abandoned. The Grand Elder looked at the darkness. Since the birth of the darkness, he had not figured out what was inside, and there was no way to control it. They used blinding light to disperse it, and they used arrays. However, the darkness was so dense that even the strong light was devoured. The Grand Elder said, "Set up a large array in the city. When the darkness devours, it will be activated." When the time came, the light produced by the array would be dazzling and scorching. If a person was inside the array, he would be instantly turned into ashes and annihilated. What was the darkness? There was no attack, no smell, nothing, but it made people feel helpless. Everyone left the city wall and returned to the city. There were many people living in the city, and now everyone had to evacuate and leave the city. It was about to be devoured. They could not tell how many times they had abandoned the city. The other party did not have a single soldier or horse, but they were defeated. They kept shrinking back. Their current state would be the future state of the void. Everyone and all races were shrinking back to the light. In the end, the place where they could shrink became smaller and smaller. They were squeezed together and would eventually be devoured by the darkness. On the other side, the darkness resisted the bright light and moved forward with difficulty. The bright light was gradually devoured by the darkness. It was as if a huge monster had opened its mouth and devoured the light, as well as half of the city. When the entire city was devoured, the array in the city was activated. The strong light was like the sun shining on the ground through the dark clouds. Beams of light penetrated the thick darkness. The light was scorching hot, and wisps of darkness disappeared as if the array was activated. The Grand Elder looked at this scene. So, darkness is a substance. If light was a substance, then darkness should be a substance as well. The darkness in front was dispersed by the light, and even scattered. However, the darkness slowly gathered again, and the darkness behind moved forward. In the end, the entire city was devoured. The array formation was devoured. The light was devoured. This kind of scene was really too impactful. No one had the courage to rush into the darkness to see what was in the darkness. Because he didn't know if he would be able to get out, there was really nothing he could do about it. It was really infuriating. Was it that easy to build a house? Although the city wasn't built by them, but after leaving, she had to find a new place to stay. That was quite unpleasant. What the hell is this? Wuxia was too lazy to care about this damn thing. It would live as long as it could. Furthermore, it was only the void that had sunk into darkness. It might not necessarily die. Fortunately, there were many things to eat and drink in the Qiantian realm. It was much more interesting than the void outside. Many people were willing to stay and record the distance that the darkness had devoured. It was also to figure out these substances and find a solution, compared to passively waiting for death. If he could solve the problem of the darkness, then it would be treating the symptoms and treating the root of the problem. It would be better than living in fear. Until now, they still didn't know what the darkness was. Even if they used light, the darkness could devour even light. For things like the void, some places were very dark, so it would be devoured faster. When a city was devoured, they would build another one. When a city was devoured, everyone was only disappointed for a while. Then, they began to whisper to each other about where to build a city. They should build a few more cities. They should build them at intervals so that the next city wouldn't be devoured by the darkness and have to be rebuilt again. They should do it all at once. This city was built when the Qiantian realm was opened. Xiu was in the middle. The darkness had already covered half of the Qiantian realm. The Qiantian realm was like an independent space without any loopholes. The purpose of opening this place was to keep the darkness inside, like putting water in a jar. However, if there was more and more water, the water would overflow from the jar. It was just that they didn't know if it could be kept. Everyone had no idea. The souls stationed in the Qiantian realm began to build the city. These souls were brought over by the Grand Uncle. They didn't need to resist the darkness. They didn't have the ability to do so. They only needed to take care of some logistics, build houses, clean the city, cook, and do some other things. Not only were there void creatures in the city, there were also many humans. These people were not weak, but because of the limitations of their souls, there was an upper limit. They couldn't compare to the void creatures. Moreover, the void creatures had racial talents. To the void creatures, these souls were really too weak. They could crush them with a finger. However, they were the Grand Uncle's people, so they didn't dare to touch them. After all, these souls were weak, but the Grand Uncle wasn't weak. Moreover, their living standards were directly related to these people. Even the construction of the city, the layout of the rooms, the decorations, and so on were all done by the human souls. If these void creatures were to do it, it would definitely be a mess. Therefore, even if these souls were weak, the void creatures wouldn't attack them. Sometimes, they would even reveal some things that only existed in the void. To the human souls, if they could get these things, they could exchange them for more resources when they returned to the organization. It was very worthwhile. The void creatures and the souls seemed to be getting along very well in the city. The Grand Uncle called a soul in front of him and said, "Build a few more cities according to a certain distance." As he spoke, he looked at the squirming darkness, moving inch by inch. There were marks on the ground. When he stared at the darkness, he couldn't feel the movement of the darkness. However, when he looked at the marks on the ground, he knew how far the darkness had moved. Moreover, it wasn't a short distance. The Grand Uncle wasn't sure if the Qiantian realm could trap the darkness. The soul passed down the Grand Uncle's order, and all the souls were mobilized. No other race could compare to the humans' ability to move. They worked like efficient machines. Chapter 41-58. The void races couldn't help. When the souls were busy, they tried their best to delay the devouring speed of the darkness. Delaying the darkness for 1 second was 1 second. Grand Uncle discussed with the creature next to him. Passively defending like this won't work. Then what should we do? They couldn't hit or scold. The darkness devouring everything wasn't a joke. Attacking was even more useless. It was like hitting the air. Grand Uncle looked at the gloomy darkness. This side was bright, but the other side was dark. There was nothing in the endless darkness. "I want to go in and take a look." The void creature next to him was frightened. "Are you crazy? It's not like we didn't put anything in, but none of them came out. There wasn't even any movement." Everyone tacitly agreed that as long as they were devoured by the darkness, there would be nothing left. They would turn into darkness. There was no upgrade, not even a skeleton. entering the thick darkness was simply courting death. Anyway, everyone present took a step back. They didn't want to go in at all, not going, not going, not going in even if they die, not to mention whether they would die or not. If they went in, they wouldn't be able to find the way out. If they got lost in the darkness, they would die sooner or later. If they put something in, there would be no trace of it. Granduncle stood still. The person next to him said, "Don't tell me you want to go in." "Don't go in," Granduncle frowned. His pale skin was almost transparent under the bright light. He said, "I'll go in and take a look." "You're crazy. You won't be able to come out if you go in. Don't go in." The person next to him reached out to pull him. Granduncle took a step to the side and avoided this person. He was a little embarrassed, but he still said, "There's no need to take the risk. To be honest, if the darkness devoured, then so be it. What they had to do was to delay it. It wasn't something urgent, so there was no need to take such a risk." They all had the same idea. If the darkness devoured them, they would move. When there was no place to move, then they would die, but by then, they would have lived long enough. Granduncle said, "I want to take a look." There were some things that couldn't be understood. It was like a fishbone stuck in one's throat. And what exactly was this thing? Why was it born? Some people could be confused, but Granduncle couldn't. His heart was burning with anxiety, and that feeling was scratching his heart and lungs. He even put some back in a bottle, but under the bright light, the bottle was transparent and there was nothing in it. Darkness. The people around him didn't know what to say. They had tried to persuade him, but he didn't listen. What could they do? Moreover, if something happened to the Grand Elder, wouldn't these souls at the grassroots be disobedient? After all, doing laundry, cooking, and many other things required souls to do. These people were weak, and void creatures even looked down on human souls. But without them, his days would be a mess. She was used to someone keeping everything neat and tidy. She could reach out and drink some water. In short, it was too comfortable. If he were to return to his previous life, he would not be used to it. It was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but hard to go from extravagance to frugality. As long as the Grand Elder was safe, these souls would also be safe. Senior Granduncle, of course I won't rush in rashly. I have to make some preparations. Dazzling light lit up the surroundings. Under such light, Taishu rushed into the darkness, and his figure was directly swallowed by the darkness. Make it brighter, make it brighter. Most people felt that the Grand Elder couldn't come out. After all, the creatures that went in never came out. This was too impulsive. Was it necessary? The bright light made people unable to open their eyes. Everyone stared at the darkness. As time passed, everyone felt that the Grand Elder couldn't come out. Sigh, why did he have to be so reckless? Everyone dispersed one after another. After guarding for so long, if he could come out, he would have come out long ago. Some souls stayed here, waiting for the Grand Elder to come out. As time passed, there were fewer and fewer people waiting. The people were sparse, and in the end, only the souls were left. These souls were also very annoyed. If something really happened to the Grand Elder, they didn't know what kind of stormy waves would be when they returned to the organization. The leaders of the organization might eat them up and make their souls scatter. Damn it, the Grand Elder and the others couldn't persuade them. Although they already had a bad feeling, these souls still had to be guarded. Not only did they have to guard, but they also had to inform the organization. They had to inform them. If they didn't, those people would explode. Once they exploded, the unlucky ones would definitely be the souls present. They had already done what they needed to do, so they couldn't be blamed for anything. Of course, the dazzling light still had to be lit, and it had to be very bright. The people from the organization who borrowed the news came over, covered in dust. The leaders were Sang Liang and An He. Behind them, a large group of people asked the station souls, "What's going on? How long has it been since he went in?" "It's been a long time, and the darkness has moved forward a little." Sang Liang frowned tightly. His face was pale, and he paced around a few times. And he comforted him, he probably went in because he was confident. It should be fine. After all, the Grand Elder wasn't weak. If he went in without any preparation, he wouldn't go in. It was a joke to risk his life. Sang Liang knew, but he was too concerned. Make some light and throw it inside. Some light would allow him to find the direction. Why hasn't he come out yet? Sang Liang was a little anxious and paced back and forth. And he was a little more stable. He was thinking more about what would happen to the organization if the Grand Elder collapsed. The stable situation would probably change. And what would the organization do in the future? Would it still be the same as before? After all, the organization was established because of someone, and it was needed by someone. Now that the person was gone, would they still be alive? It was true that life depended on one person. For both public and private reasons, and he still hoped that the Grand Elder was still alive. After all, he was stable. If he died, their fate would also be unstable. Sang Liang stood still and looked into the darkness. Mo Ming stood beside and whispered, "What's the probability of him coming out?" And he said, "Then say more auspicious words. Maybe he can come out safely." Mo Ming. "Well, I hope he can come out safely." Mo Ming didn't think that the Grand Elder would come out if he said some good words. It was said that the Grand Elder had luck, but it was impossible to turn the situation around with just a few words. As time passed, the atmosphere became more and more stagnant. The longer it was, the less the Grand Elder's vitality was, and the more dangerous it was. The probability of him coming out was even lower. Chapter 41-59. The time it took for the Grand Uncle to enter was getting longer and longer. Even if he stood still, he would get lost. Mo Ming tried his best to stabilize his emotions, hoping that the Grand Uncle could come out. He also asked the surrounding souls about the situation. They wanted to know why the Grand Uncle went in. The Qianshan realm had existed for a long time, but no one had figured out what the darkness was. What could the station souls do? Their lives were hanging by a thread. If the Grand Uncle couldn't come out, they might be beaten to death by their angry superiors. What a tough life. She told Mo Ming the whole story in detail. Mo Ming furrowed his brows. The Grand Uncle should have gone in prepared, but the problem was that even if he wanted to come out, it would consume a lot of energy, which would be a burden on the Grand Uncle's body. Now, he had to conserve his energy and not waste any of it. He had to use it wisely. What could Mo Ming do? He could only wait here. He couldn't go in. Once he went in, it would be, "You look for me, I look for you," and there would be no end to it. At this time, he had to wait for the Grand Uncle to come out. He looked at it. If he didn't come out after half a day, he would have to find a way to go in and look for him. And he said, "Should we put something in to look for him? The drones in their hands should be able to do it. At least they could make some light for the people inside to pay attention." In short, they had to find a way to contact the people inside. Mo Ming nodded. "Okay, go do it." The army at the back immediately carried out all kinds of boxes. Some of these machines were crawling on the ground, and some were flying in the sky. In short, they observed from all angles. They turned on the computer, which showed a dark image. Even though these machines had light, in the thick darkness, there was only a faint light. The light was almost completely swallowed, the machines on the ground were very bumpy, and the image transmitted back was shaking so much that it couldn't be seen clearly. Mo Ming frowned and looked at the image. What could they see in such darkness? These machines were not damaged, but they couldn't find their way in the darkness and didn't know where to go. Moreover, the signal was very weak. In the end, even the black image was gone. Did the robots run too far or something? Anyway, there was no way to save them. Mo Ming was quite annoyed. He covered his forehead with his hand and didn't say a word. And he looked at the image and was in a bad mood. Something happened to the grand uncle. This was a big earthquake. Now that there was a problem with the Sea of Laws, not long after, their organization would fall apart, and where to go would be a huge problem. Mo Ming looked at the darkness that was devouring the world. Humans could not resist life, old age, sickness, and death. It was normal for the void to fall into darkness one day. He just didn't know if living creatures could survive in the darkness. How were they going to live their days in the dark? Perhaps, those inconspicuous small worlds would instead become places of residence. At that time, would they have to fight for territory with the creatures of the small worlds? Could a small world withstand the creation? Of course, these were just Mo Ming's thoughts. Even if darkness came, it would be a long time in the future. Since birth, one must walk on the path of death. All sorts of bright and dazzling items were thrown into the darkness, but they didn't even flicker before they were swallowed by the darkness. Darkness was easy to deal with. As long as one had a blazing, bright light, just like the sun, emitting light and heat at any time and place to dispel darkness. However, there was no sun in the void. Could it be that someone had to create a sun to dispel the darkness? But what if there was so much heat to support the combustion? The heat emitted by the sun was due to the internal nuclear change, chemical reactions, and physics that produced a large amount of heat. When the reaction inside stopped, the heat would disappear, and so would the light and heat. Mo Ming was not very optimistic about artificially creating a sun. The darkness was still wriggling and moving. Nothing could stop it. A little white appeared in the darkness. The white became more and more obvious. Mo Ming couldn't help but walk over. He saw the white-haired senior uncle. His neck and face were covered with black lines. He asked, "Are you okay? Your hair." Senior uncle just said, "Let's go back first." Mo Ming exhaled. "I was shocked. I thought something had happened to you." Senior uncle said, "It's nothing serious." Mo Ming said to he, "You guys go back to the organization first." And he didn't say anything and left with the people below. In this situation, it was not suitable for them to stay here. They just had to do what they had to do. There was a difference between being close and distant. Mo Ming looked back at senior uncle. Senior uncle's black hair was all white, but his face was all black. He frowned. Senior uncle's condition was worse than he thought. Perhaps the grand elder would die when the darkness swallowed the void. As soon as they left, senior uncle's body relaxed. He looked a little painful. Mo Ming reached out to help him and took out the energy body from his pocket. "Absorb some." The energy body turned into powder in senior uncle's hand and fell to the ground. Senior uncle sat down and rested for a while. When the black lines on senior uncle's face and neck gradually disappeared, he asked, "How did this happen?" Senior uncle said, "It's too dark inside. I can't use many methods." There was no road and no direction. It was not easy to find the exit. Mo Ming looked at his snow-white hair. "Your hair." Senior uncle said, "It's nothing serious. I just used too much power. Can you recover in the future?" Mo Ming reached out and touched his white hair. It was white as snow. He could not imagine what he had experienced in there. The time outside was not long, but in the darkness, time should be very slow. Mo Ming changed the topic and didn't ask about his body. He asked, "What did you find inside?" "It's just darkness. This thing can't be stopped." There was nothing attacking inside. It was just darkness. But it was this kind of darkness that made people helpless. If it was a life, if it knew how to attack people, it would just kill it. Maybe there would be no darkness. But this was darkness. There was nothing else. Mo Ming said coldly, "According to the devouring speed of the darkness, it will take a long time. Don't go in again next time. It's meaningless." It was still the same sentence. Maybe senior uncle was dead, but the darkness couldn't devour the void. if the void creatures wanted to save themselves, they had to think of a way. Many creatures were ignorant. Why should the grand uncles go in? Even if the end of the world came, everyone would die together because the darkness was unavoidable. However, because the territory was getting smaller and smaller, many races would migrate when they lost their land. By then, the places they could live in would be smaller and smaller. Chapter 4160. It was inevitable that everyone would be crowded together, and there would be more conflicts and conflicts. One could imagine that there would be fights everywhere in the void, fighting for a place to rest, fighting for resources. Mo Ming's face was cold. He didn't care even if the races in the void killed each other. He wasn't the one who caused this situation. Mo Ming sighed in his heart. The creatures in the void were too comfortable. It was time for them to move. Before they died, they had to struggle like a fish on a chopping board. Although they were definitely going to die, if they didn't jump around, they wouldn't have a soul. Only when they moved would they have vitality. They had to fish in troubled waters and win in chaos. There were too many races in the void, and some races had never even shown up. If some races had the healing Taishu, even if everyone had to die, Taishu had to be the last to die. Taishu looked tired and didn't speak. He followed Mo Ming back to the organization and then lay on the black stone bed. Mo Ming went out and then came back with a bottle in his hand. There was bright red blood in the bottle. Drink something before you sleep. Mo Ming woke Taishu up. Taishu glanced at the bottle and frowned. He looked a little disgusted. I don't drink this kind of thing. It doesn't taste good. Now that you have a problem with your body, drink some. If Ning Shu was here, he would jump up and scold him. What kind of scene was this? Taishu was disgusted and even coaxed him to drink his blood. Taishu didn't want it. He turned his body and turned his back to Mo Ming. Look after the organization. I'm not in a good state now. Someone is going to make a move. Was this organization united? Of course not. Benefits were the core of a person's desire. Mo Ming left with the bottle. It was a pity about the blood. Mo Ming notified Mo Ming to come over. Mo Ming was notified by the main system and was especially surprised. He couldn't figure out why he had to be notified directly without his superiors. Mo Ming said to Mo Ming, go and call Ning Shu over. Mo Ming was a little confused. Isn't she dead? That little fatty is her. You've seen her before, Mo Ming said. Mo Ming's face was filled with questions. He really couldn't understand how Ning Shu had turned into that little girl. What kind of fantasy had happened in between? Mo Ming asked tentatively, why are you looking for her? Mo Ming said, I have something that she wants. She will know about it. Go and inform her. What could he do when faced with a task assigned by his superior? Even if he was unwilling, he still had to go. Mo Ming went all the way to the Netherworld River. The Netherworld River was still smelly. Because the location had changed, Mo Ming searched for a long time. There was a man plucking chicken feathers in the yard. He looked up at Mo Ming. Who are you looking for? Mo Ming stood outside the fence and said, I'm looking for Ning Shu. Although he had his doubts before, Mo Ming still couldn't accept it when it was officially acknowledged. The man who was plucking the chicken stood up, wiped his hands on his apron, and went into the house. After a while, he came out, followed by a sleepy little girl. She seemed to be doing well and had gained some weight. When Ning Shu saw Mo Ming, he immediately extended his hand to greet him. Come in. Why are you here? Only then did Mo Ming enter the courtyard. When he saw the man plucking the chicken feathers again, he used a lot of effort to shift his gaze away from him. It was too strange to see a void creature plucking chicken feathers. Ning Shu poured a cup of tea for Mo Ming. What's the matter? Mo Ming said, You're Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded and smiled. Yes. For some reason, I didn't die. Ning Shu wasn't afraid of being exposed at all. She could now announce to the world, I'm back. I'm Ning Shu. I'm your father. That's good. I thought you were dead. Mo Ming didn't drink the tea. He was in a spirit state and couldn't eat unprocessed food. Mo Ming stared at Ning Shu. Ning Shu touched his face. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Mo Ming said, you don't look like you used to. Ning Shu said, that's not necessarily true. After all, I haven't opened up yet. When I do, I'll still be as beautiful as before. Mo Ming looked at Ning Shu's chubby face in silence. He couldn't imagine what she would look like when she opened up. He went straight to the point. I'm looking for you because the main system asked me to. Ning Shu was surprised. Sang Liang. Why is he looking for me? Sang Liang had been avoiding him before, but now he was actively looking for him. What kind of conspiracy was this? In any case, Ning Shu was very wary of Sang Liang. Mo Ming said, he said he has something you want and wants you to go over. Ning Shu was speechless. I really didn't believe him. That old man was very evil. If he let her go, it might be easy to catch a turtle in a jar. Ning Shu asked indifferently, what is he talking about? Mo Ming shook his head. I don't know. He only said that you need it. Ning Shu's first reaction was blood. But why did Sang Liang want to exchange blood with him again? No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem possible. For someone like Sang Liang, everything he did was traceable. Ning Shu asked directly, did something happen in the organization? Mo Ming paused. A lot of things happened in the organization. I guess the main system is looking for you because of the Grand Uncle. Ning Shu wasn't surprised at all. Only the Grand Uncle was worthy of Sang Liang's painstaking planning. As for the others, Sang Liang just said, it's none of your business. Get lost. Ning Shu asked, what happened to the Grand Uncle? Mo Ming paused for a few seconds and finally said, the organization may be in chaos. The void will be in chaos too. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows in surprise. The Grand Uncle can't live? Mo Ming was speechless. Ning Shu said, go on. Mo Ming looked a little conflicted. I don't know if I should tell you. Logically speaking, such things in the organization shouldn't be told to others. And looking at the grudge between Ning Shu and the Grand Uncle, there might be more trouble. If something really happened to the Grand Uncle, the organization would definitely be in turmoil. Mo Ming didn't want that. Souls were very weak compared to void creatures. Even if there were countless souls in the organization, they might not be able to beat the Grand Uncle alone. That was the difference in quality. The Grand Uncle may be injured. Ning Shu said, when isn't he injured? If there was a problem with the Sea of Law, the Grand Uncle's body would always have problems. She now understood that Sang Liang might be looking for her because of the Grand Uncle's body. Maybe he would use force, maybe he would use soft methods. Ning Shu laughed. Then go. I asked you to come to me. I can't make it difficult for you, right? Mo Ming said. Actually, you don't have to go. Ning Shu waved his hand. It's okay. Wait for me to get something. Chapter 4161. She definitely had to go, but she couldn't go unprepared like this. No matter what Sang Liang's motive was, Ning Shu wasn't afraid. Sang Liang seemed to want to take advantage of her. However, when it came to taking advantage, it was either you die or I live. Perhaps in the end, he would suffer a loss. According to Mo Ming, Senior Uncle's situation didn't seem good. She had to go and take a look. Even if she couldn't do anything, she had to know. If not, she would laugh at him. No matter how badly Senior Uncle had gotten himself into, she had to go and take a look. Sang Liang had what she wanted, but she also had what senior uncle and Sang Liang wanted. It was fine if they could make a deal, but if they couldn't, no one would make things difficult for the other. Everyone needed each other. Ning Shu walked into the house, picked up the holy whip, and placed it in the space. Jin Ji looked at Ning Shu in confusion. Where are you taking him? I have something to do. I need him. He had to take the holy whip with him, in case he didn't have enough combat power. Jin Ji immediately said, I want to go too. Ning Shu was speechless. It was inconvenient to have a family with her. Moreover, she was going to see Sang Liang. He didn't know what Jin Ji would be like when she saw Sang Liang. The scene would definitely be unimaginable, there would be more variables, so Ning Shu said, you'd better not go. Just wait for me to come back. Don't worry, I will definitely bring Fatan back. Jin Ji pouted. She was obviously unhappy and didn't believe Ning Shu at all. She said again, I want to go. Ning Shu said, you're not allowed to go. Jin Ji didn't have time to talk back. He first stuffed something into his mouth and chewed loudly. His cheeks were chewed very loudly. Ning Shu felt pain in her bones, as if she was being bitten on her own bones. After swallowing the food in her mouth, Jin Ji said, I want to go. I don't know what you're going to do to him. Jin Ji looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. Why don't you let me go? What do you want to do? Ning Shu looked at Jin Ji in surprise. I didn't expect you to be able to think. She had always thought that 90% of Jin Ji's mind was about food, and 10% of it was Jin Ji. These two things occupied Jin Ji's mind. Jin Ji looked at Ning Shu warily. Give him back to me. Ning Shu stretched out his index finger and waved it in front of Jin Ji. No, no, no. Fatan was never yours. You're thinking too much. This bastard actually dared to snatch people from her. 10 yuan for 3 keys, 10 yuan for 3 keys. Are you even worthy? How many keys do you have? Ning Shu felt a strong sense of crisis in his heart. Fuck, his woman was going to be abducted. Jin Ji revealed a ferocious expression. Return her to me. Ning Shu, I won't. Mo Ming was waiting in the living room when he heard loud bangs in the house. The dust on the walls was about to fall off. He did not know what was going on. He wanted to go in and take a look, but it was not good to walk around in someone else's house. When the commotion inside stopped, they came out. Sang Liang saw that Ning Shu's face was full of teeth marks, his hair was messy, and his clothes were wrinkled. Mo Ming raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, Are you okay? Ning Shu smiled. I'm fine. Mo Ming, you don't look like you're fine. Behind Ning Shu was Jin Ji. Jin Ji was in a worse state than Ning Shu. There were shoe marks on his face, his nose was bruised, and his face was swollen. He clutched tightly onto Ning Shu's clothes. Jin Ji's expression was very stubborn. His other hand reached into his pocket and stuffed a bunch of things into his mouth. His cheeks were puffed up as he glared fiercely at Ning Shu. Mo Ming did not know what to say. He only said, Why don't you clean up? Since they were going to make a deal, it was not appropriate to appear in front of Sang Liang like this. Ning Shu said, Wait for me for a while. When Earthworm saw Ning Shu and Jin Ji, his expression froze. It was like a parent seeing a disobedient child. What happened? Ning Shu kicked Jin Ji. Ask him. Jin Ji kicked back without thinking. Both of them had a new footprint on their bodies. Ning Shu said, I want to wash up. Earthworm fetched a basin of water for Ning Shu and said, How many rounds have you been older than him? Do you have to fight with a child like this? Ning Shu washed his face. Not only have I beaten him many times, but I'm also older than you by many rounds. This has nothing to do with age. Ning Shu turned to Jin Ji and said, "Let go. As long as you listen to me, I'll take you there." Jin Ji was very doubtful. "Really?" Ning Shu took a deep breath. Why did Jin Ji think that she did not mean what she said and doubted her character? When Ning Shu and Jin Ji came out again, they were two fair and clean children. If it was not for the teeth marks on one's face and the other's bruises on the other's face, one would not be able to tell that they had fought. Ning Shu said to Mo Ming, "Let's go." Mo Ming glanced at Jin Ji, who was following behind. "He's going too." Ning Shu said, "Of course. If there's a problem, throw him out." To a certain extent, Jin Ji was Sang Liang's natural enemy. Even the Divine Stone clan was afraid of Jin Ji's teeth. He did not believe that the delicate Mo Ming was not afraid of Jin Ji. He directly threw Jin Ji into Sang Liang's arms as if he had thrown a bomb. But if nothing happened, Ning Shu felt like he was leading a mad dog. He could not even pull it back. It was so tough. Moreover, she was not Fa Tian. Jin Ji listened to Fa Tian, but he felt that her words were ordinary. It was also because of Fa Tian that they could be so peaceful and stable. The earthworm asked, "When will you come back? When will you stew?" Ning Shu said, "You can stew it in the pot now. Don't stew it in the pot. I want to eat pot chicken. The pot is more fragrant." The earthworm was expressionless. "Why don't you do it?" Ning Shu quickly shook his head. "I'll listen to you. I'll do as you say." Mo Ming was speechless. "You're still greedy for the taste of the human world?" Mo Ming looked at her. She was so fat. Ning Shu nodded. "Eating is really fun. In the past, when I was alive, I couldn't eat. After becoming a soul, I only tasted the taste. I didn't even feel full. If she did not gain some weight after eating, she would feel that she had not eaten anything. She would make up for what she lacked in the past." On the way, they chatted occasionally. Mo Ming said to Ning Shu, "You look like you're living a happy life." Ning Shu did not deny it. "Life is precious. Love is more valuable. If it's for freedom, both can be thrown away." Freedom, it was really too happy. To Ning Shu, love was precious. Life was more valuable. If it's for freedom, both can be thrown away. Ning Shu asked, "How about you? Are you living well?" Mo Ming thought about it seriously. "There doesn't seem to be any difference. It's neither good nor bad." Chapter 4162. When they arrived at the organization, Ning Shu went straight to the consultation room. Sang Liang was already waiting there. This time, he seemed to be quite sincere, because Sang Liang was not a projection this time, but a real person in front of him. Ning Shu instinctively stood in front of Jin Ji because she heard Jin Ji sniffing. Sang Liang said to Mo Ming, "You can go back." Ning Shu said, "Wait a minute. He completed your mission well. Don't you get any rewards? You just used his favor." If it were anyone else, Ning Shu might have come, but she wouldn't have come so easily. This was all Sang Liang's favor. Now that he had chased him away, Ning Shu was very unhappy. Sang Liang said, "There will be a reward when you go back." Mo Ming thanked him and left. Even if Sang Liang didn't say anything, he wouldn't have stayed. He still had a good eye for such things. Ning Shu clicked her tongue. If she didn't say anything, there wouldn't be a reward. She was too familiar with the organization's behavior. There was no such thing as being polite here. If she didn't say anything, it would be impossible for her to give it to her. If she didn't say anything, it meant that she didn't want it. At this time, if she didn't say anything out of politeness or because of her shame, she would be pushing away what belonged to her. There was no bad intention. She wanted something that belonged to her openly. Moreover, She wanted something that belonged to her, but the other party didn't count. It was indeed the boss's style. If you wanted his money, he wanted your life. In turn, he would say that you were petty and not magnanimous. You fought like a chicken for something. If you gave it to her, she wouldn't make a fuss. Ning Shu stood in front of Jin Ji and asked Sang Liang, "Do you want to exchange something with me? Give it to me. What do you want in exchange? If your item is too inferior, I won't exchange it." Sang Liang took out a glass bottle the size of his index finger. It was a bottle of blood. When Jin Ji saw this kind of thing, he rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Sang Liang's hands were very quick, and he directly kept the thing. But when Jin Ji got close to Sang Liang, she sniffled and leaned against him. The closer he got, the more he drooled. The table was covered in his saliva. Sang Liang's expression was extremely ugly. One night paper directly blocked in front of Sang Liang and Jin Ji, isolating them from each other. Jin Ji smashed the pages of the book. The pages were very sturdy and did not move even after being smashed. A page of the book separated the dangerous elements. Sang Liang stared at Ning Shu. "What do you mean?" Ning Shu said, "I don't mean anything, but this child insists on following me. I can't do anything about it. Look at the teeth marks on my face. I really can't control him. Do you want to exchange the blood in here with me?" Ning Shu asked as he dragged Jin Ji away. Sang Liang was like a bank teller who had encountered a robber. He was using pages and pages to block out the danger. The two people opposite him were people who wanted to skin him alive. Sang Liang, "Yes, 20 bottles." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "What are you daydreaming about? 20 bottles? Why don't you just go to heaven? You really can say whatever you want when you open your mouth. 20 bottles. Are you worthy? You're not. If we talk properly, we can still make a deal. If you talk nonsense like this, there's no way to talk at all." Ning Shu pulled a chair and sat down. "Hey, can you hear me?" She felt that if she cut the pages, the other party would not be able to hear what she said at all. Sang Liang, 20 bottles, not one less. Ning Shu, so there's no way to talk. She snorted. "You might have some misunderstanding about your blood. Don't make me pay the price. I think your blood is good, but it's beyond my psychological value. Your blood is not precious to me. This blood is not worthy of 20 bottles. Ning Shu beat around the bush. "Look at how anxious you are. Is there a problem with the Sea of Law? Then it must be Granduncle." Sang Liang said coldly, "It's none of your business. Ning Shu, I'm just concerned. I heard that he was injured. I don't know how injured he is. Who else in the void can hurt Granduncle? I'd like to pay a visit." Sang Liang showed a cold smile. It was a fake smile, but the corners of his mouth were hooked up like a fish hook. His smile was so ugly. "Yes, go to the Qianshan realm. Go into the darkness and you'll find the answer." Ning Shu remembered the information. Qianshan realm. Granduncle was injured in the Qianshan realm. What was darkness? However, Sang Liang definitely did not have good intentions. "You old man, you're very bad." Ning Shu looked at the bottles and said, "How about this, I'll give you 4 bottles. Sang Liang, you want to exchange for 4 bottles? Are you worthy?" Ning Shu nodded. "I'm worthy." Both sides wanted to minimize the loss and were unwilling to give in. If it was someone else, Ning Shu would accept it if he felt that he was at a disadvantage. However, there was no way for Sang Liang. No one wanted to benefit from Sang Liang. Sang Liang sneered. "Your heart is not ordinary." Ning Shu said directly, "It's up to you whether you want to exchange or not. I'm not the one who needs this thing now. It's not necessary for me. It's just icing on the cake." Are you angry that someone is taking advantage of you when you need something? Ning Shu looked at Sang Liang with a smile. Sang Liang also laughed. It's up to you whether you want to exchange or not. She had thought that since she had already bled, she couldn't let it go in vain. That was why she wanted to exchange, as if someone was begging her. Anyway, it didn't matter if she lost a little blood. Ning Shu spread his hands. If you don't want to exchange, then don't exchange. Who cares? The negotiation failed. Sang Liang stood up with the book and went straight into the room. Ning Shu sneered. He felt that it was quite interesting. Sang Liang was a little angry now. He probably hadn't changed back from his previous identity and wasn't used to begging people. Ning Shu pulled the restless Jin Ji. Let's go. Sang Liang didn't have any intention of begging. Did Ning Shu want to beg him? If they couldn't come to an agreement, then let's not talk about it. It wasn't a big deal. He kept the water for himself. He might need it next time. But he really didn't have the courage to beat himself up like that. It was too tragic. Jin Ji asked, "Don't you want that thing?" Ning Shu said calmly, "No, it's not something good." Jin Ji said, "I want it." Ning Shu said, "What does it have to do with me? If you have the ability, go and get it yourself." Jin Ji was very unhappy when he was pulled out. Ning Shu brought him to a restaurant to eat. Jin Ji asked, "Why not?" Ning Shu still explained, he wants to exchange that thing for something else. Jin Ji said, "Then exchange." Ning Shu shook his head. "No, because it's not worth it." Alright, Jin Ji didn't know how to measure value. He was very unhappy. The man in the Cheongsam was leisurely fanning himself, drinking tea and talking to a girl. When he saw Ning Shu and Jin Ji, he was a little surprised. The organization still accepted such young mission takers. Chapter 4163. When they arrived at the organization, Ning Shu went straight to the consultation room. Sang Liang was already waiting there. This time, he seemed to be quite sincere, because Sang Liang was not a projection this time, but a real person in front of him. Ning Shu instinctively stood in front of Jin Ji because she heard Jin Ji sniffing. Sang Liang said to Mo Ming, "You can go back." Ning Shu said, "Wait a minute. He completed your mission well. Don't you get a reward? You used his favor." If it were someone else, Ning Shu might have come, but she would not have come so easily. This was all Sang Liang's favor. Now that he had chased him away, Ning Shu was very unhappy. Sang Liang said, "There will be a reward when you go back." Mo Ming thanked him and left. Even if Sang Liang did not say anything, he would not have stayed. He still had this bit of foresight. Ning Shu clicked her tongue. If she did not say anything, there would be no reward. She was too familiar with the organization's behavior. There was no such thing as being polite here. If she did not say anything, it would be impossible for her to take the initiative to give it to her. If she did not say anything, it meant that she did not want it. At this time, if she was polite or embarrassed and could not say anything, she would be pushing away what belonged to her. There was no bad intention. She wanted something that belonged to her openly. Moreover, she wanted something that belonged to her, but the other party did not count. It was indeed the boss's style. If you wanted his money, he wanted your life. In turn, he would say that you were petty and not magnanimous. He would fight over something like a chicken's eye. If you fucking gave it to him, he would not make a fuss. Ning Shu stood in front of Jin Ji and asked Sang Liang, "Do you want to exchange something with me? Give it to me. What do you want in exchange? If your item is too inferior, I will not exchange it." Sang Liang took out a glass bottle the size of his index finger. It was a bottle of blood. When Jin Ji saw this kind of thing, he rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Sang Liang's hands were very quick, and he directly kept the thing. But Jin Ji, who was close to Sang Liang, sniffled and leaned against him. The closer he got, the more he drooled. The table was covered in his saliva. Sang Liang's expression was extremely ugly. One night paper directly blocked in front of Sang Liang and Jin Ji, isolating them from each other. Jin Ji smashed the pages of the book. The pages were very sturdy and did not move even after being smashed. A page of the book separated the dangerous elements. Sang Liang stared at Ning Shu. "What do you mean?" Ning Shu said, "I don't mean anything, but this child insists on following me. I can't do anything about it. Look at the teeth marks on my face. I really can't control him. Do you want to exchange the blood in here with me?" Ning Shu asked as he dragged Jin Ji away. Sang Liang was like a bank teller who had encountered a robber. He was using pages and pages to block out the danger. The two people opposite him were people who wanted to skin him alive. Sang Liang, "Yes, 20 bottles." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "What are you daydreaming about? 20 bottles? Why don't you just go to heaven? You really can say whatever you want when you open your mouth. 20 bottles. Are you worthy? You're not. If we talk properly, we can still make a deal. If you talk nonsense like this, there's no way to talk at all." Ning Shu pulled a chair and sat down. "Hey, can you hear me?" She felt that if she cut the pages, the other party would not be able to hear what she said at all. Sang Liang, 20 bottles, not one less. Ning Shu, so there's no way to talk. She snorted. "You might have some misunderstanding about your blood. Don't make me pay the price. I think your blood is good, but it's beyond my psychological value. Your blood is not precious to me. This blood is not worthy of 20 bottles. Ning Shu beat around the bush. "Look at how anxious you are. Is there a problem with the Sea of Law? Then it must be Grand Uncle." Sang Liang said coldly, "It's none of your business. Ning Shu, I'm just concerned. I heard that he was injured. I don't know how injured he is. Who else in the void can hurt Grand Uncle? I'd like to pay a visit." Sang Liang showed a cold smile. It was a fake smile, but the corners of his mouth were hooked up like a fish hook. His smile was so ugly. "Yes, go to the Qianshan realm. Go into the darkness and you'll find the answer." Ning Shu remembered the information. Qianshan realm. Grand Uncle was injured in the Qianshan realm. What was darkness? However, Sang Liang definitely did not have good intentions. "You're a bad old man, very bad." Ning Shu looked at the bottles and said, "How about this, I'll give you 4 bottles. Sang Liang, you want to exchange for 4 bottles? Are you worthy?" Ning Shu nodded. "I'm worthy." Both sides wanted to minimize the loss and were unwilling to give in. If it was someone else, Ning Shu would accept it if he felt that he was at a disadvantage. However, there was no way for Sang Liang. No one wanted to benefit from Sang Liang. Sang Liang sneered. "Your heart is not ordinary." Ning Shu said directly, "It's up to you whether you want to exchange or not. I'm not the one who needs this thing now. It's not necessary for me. It's just icing on the cake. Are you angry that someone is taking advantage of you when you need something?" Ning Shu looked at Sang Liang with a smile. Sang Liang also laughed. "It's up to you whether you want to exchange or not." She had thought that since she had already bled, she couldn't let it go in vain. That was why she wanted to exchange, as if someone was begging her. Anyway, it wouldn't be a big deal to lose this little bit of blood. Ning Shu spread his hands. "If you don't want to exchange, then don't exchange. Who cares?" The negotiation failed. Sang Liang stood up with the book and went straight into the room. Ning Shu snorted. He felt that it was quite interesting. Sang Liang seemed to be angry out of embarrassment. He probably hadn't changed back from his previous identity and wasn't used to begging people. Ning Shu pulled the restless Jin Ji. Let's go. Sang Liang didn't have any intention of begging. Did Ning Shu want to beg him? If they couldn't come to an agreement, then let's not talk about it. It wasn't a big deal. He kept the water for himself. He might need it next time. But he really didn't have the courage to beat himself up like that. It was too tragic. Jin Ji asked, "Don't you want that thing?" Ning Shu said calmly, "No, it's not something good." Jin Ji said, "I want it." Ning Shu said, "What does it have to do with me? If you have the ability, go and get it yourself." Jin Ji was very unhappy when he was pulled out. Ning Shu brought him to a restaurant to eat. Jin Ji asked, "Why not?" Ning Shu still explained, "He wants to use that thing to exchange for something else." Jin Ji said, "Then exchange." Ning Shu shook his head. "No, because it's not worth it." Alright, Jin Ji didn't know how to measure value. He was very unhappy. The man in the Cheongsam was leisurely fanning himself, drinking tea and talking to a girl. When he saw Ning Shu and Jin Ji, he was a little surprised. The organization still accepted such young mission takers. Chapter 4164. The Cheongsam man saw that Ning Shu and Jin Ji were unfamiliar faces. It was probably their first time here. After exchanging a few words with the girl left. The Cheongsam man brought the two kids over. Every time he saw the Cheongsam man, he was either flirting or on the way to flirting. "Do you still remember your girlfriend who died for you?" He's here." Ning Shu didn't want to talk to the Cheongsam man at all. They had to introduce each other and explain the cause and effect. If it was Imo Ming, he would have the patience, but the Cheongsam man didn't have much interaction with him. The Cheongsam man coughed. "Kids, are you mission enforcers or here to play?" The Cheongsam man now knew that the organization didn't only have souls. There were other species with bodies. He guessed that these two were the children of the powerful people in the organization and were running around to play. Ning Shu looked at the Cheongsam man with disdain. He was too stupid. She said, "Guess." The Cheongsam man said, "I can't guess." Ning Shu said, "If you can't guess, it's none of my business." The Cheongsam man, "This little girl was too evil." The Cheongsam man said, "Uncle will treat you to food." Ning Shu said, "One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions." "What do you want?" "What do I want?" The Cheongsam man's dirty thoughts went astray. "You're so young. I don't want to do anything." Ning Shu really wanted to punch the Cheongsam man. What was he saying? They hadn't seen each other for a long time. He had become even more deranged. "We're here to eat. Doesn't the restaurant give us a menu?" The Cheongsam man was annoyed. He called a waiter over. Ning Shu didn't order anything else. He only ordered some pastries. As for the food, they would eat the earthworms when they got back. Jin Ji ate the sweet food and felt a little better. She said to Ning Shu, "Fa Tian needs that thing. I think we can exchange it." Ning Shu said, "Of course, we can exchange it, but not in this way." It was not like he was there to ask for help. Look at Sang Liang's character, he was not willing to be bullied. As for Fa Tian, it was better to have this thing. If he couldn't do it, he could use the energy form to slowly nurture him. Eventually, he would wake up. In short, he was not afraid at all. From the moment Sang Liang took the initiative to talk to her about this, he was already at a disadvantage. Sometimes, taking the initiative meant that one was anxious, but being passive did not necessarily mean that one was at a disadvantage. Let Sang Liang rush over. He was anxious to death. Jin Ji really couldn't think about things that were too profound. If she thought too much, her head would hurt a little. The more he thought about it, the faster he felt hungry. In order to prevent himself from falling into an endless appetite, he had to be a fool. As for the brain, was it just for decoration? The man in the cheongsam felt very awkward at the side. The man in the cheongsam was completely ignoring him and talking to himself. The man in the cheongsam said, "If you like it, I'll give you some." Ning Shu and Jin Ji then looked at him. Ning Shu nodded. "Sure, thank you." The cheongsam man was speechless. This was really awkward. The man in the cheongsam was still very curious about their origins and asked, "Where did you come from?" For the sake of the desserts, Ning Shu said, "We came from the void. We came here to play." The man in the cheongsam was speechless. That was it? That was it? Were his desserts so worthless, or were his words too valuable? He couldn't get what he wanted, and the other party was a child. He couldn't use his manly charm to seduce the other party, right? Even if he did, what would such an old child know? The man in the cheongsam found an excuse and left. After a while, he came back with a stunned expression. Ning Shu glanced at him. "You still want to give us desserts?" The man in the cheongsam said. "It's not that I can't, but the main system informed me to ask you to go to the consultation room." Ning Shu snorted. Wouldn't it be even more embarrassing if they kept going back and forth? Ning Shu felt sad and embarrassed for the man in the cheongsam. He said that he didn't want to make the exchange, but in the end, he asked him to go back. It was too embarrassing. However, Ning Shu still wanted to shout from the coffin, "If you ask me to go back, then I'll go back. I don't care about my reputation." Therefore, Ning Shu only said to the man in the cheongsam indifferently, "Oh, I understand." It wasn't strange that Sang Liang knew his location. Ever since he entered this place, he had been under Sang Liang's nose and was being watched everywhere. The man in the cheongsam thought that since he had informed her, there was nothing else for him to do. However, after a while, the man in the cheongsam walked in front of Ning Shu again. "He wants you to go over quickly." Ning Shu said, "Tell him that I'll go over in a while." The man in the cheongsam was speechless. Why did he feel like he had become a mouthpiece? For some reason, he felt that his existence had become very strange. The man in the cheongsam said, "He's asking when you'll go over." Ning Shu said, "In a while." The man in the cheongsam said, "How long will it be?" "I'm waiting for you." Ning Shu thought carefully. "I'll be free in a while." The man in the cheongsam really wanted to hit her. What kind of naughty child was this? She was probably that person's child. He should have just come and taken her back. Now that he was being so polite, the province must be different. At least, the man in the cheongsam felt that the main system was being very polite. After all, the style of the organization was very unyielding. The man in the cheongsam held his breath and asked, "Then when will you be free?" Ning Shu looked at him strangely. Who can say for sure what will happen in the future? You're the law of time. Why don't you make a prediction? The man in the cheongsam's face stiffened. What kind of child was this? It's impossible to predict. What had happened could not be changed. The future could not be predicted because there were too many possibilities in the future. If the man in the cheongsam had predicted that he would be in such an awkward situation, he would definitely not have gone over. He was really like a mouse in a bellows being bullied by both sides. What kind of sin had he committed? Ning Shu said, "See, if you can't predict it, I can't either." The man in the cheongsam was speechless. Could he hit her? "Can you pack the dessert you gave us?" Ning Shu asked. The man in the cheongsam was expressionless. He said like a robot, "Yes, sir." Ning Shu said, "Okay, pack it for me." The man in the cheongsam asked, "Then are you going over there?" Ning Shu said, "It depends." After that, Ning Shu and Jin Ji left the restaurant with their things. The man in the Chongsam's expression was terrible. He had been bullied and lost the dessert. In the end, he did not even manage to find out the other party's identity. This was too uncomfortable. Get lost. Don't come to the restaurant in the future. Ning Shu stared at him intensely. This gaze was so intense that it looked like he was looking at a traitor. He brought Jin Ji around the entire city, including the auction house. There were still many good things in the auction house, but Ning Shu could not use them. However, there were some delicious things that could be stewed into soup. They were very nutritious. Stewing chicken soup was the best. Then, they went to the consultation room. Please bookmark, the counterattack of the canon Fodder female supporting character. The counterattack of the canon Fodder female supporting character is updated the fastest. Chapter 4165. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Ning Shu had to make a deal with the blood. Just like Jin Ji said, Fa Tian needed it. Both sides were putting on an act, probing each other here and there. They entered the consultation room. There was another person in the room. He had striking white hair and a black windbreaker. He looked a bit like the grand uncle. Did the grand uncle change his style? Did he turn into ash? It wasn't gray. His was snow white. His skin was just a little fairer. If his skin was a little darker, yellower, or uglier, it would be a disaster with his hair. Ning Shu stared at him. The grand uncle turned to look at her. Ning Shu said, "It's really you. I thought I recognized the wrong person. Did you change your style?" Before the grand elder could say anything, Sang Liang's face was suffused with a cold light, which was daunting. The grand uncle became like this because of this. It was really unbearable for someone to make fun of this. The grand uncle looked at Ning Shu. "Do you want to change your style?" Ning Shu shook her head. "No, I'm not changing. After all, I'm still so young. It's not good for me to age prematurely." Now, Sang Liang's face was covered in frost. He couldn't bear to joke about this. He was very unhappy. "Do you want to change?" Sang Liang asked. Ning Shu said, "Let's change." At this moment, Jin Ji was sitting obediently at the side. He didn't show any desire for Sang Liang. Perhaps because the grand uncle was here, even the incarnation of appetite had to be sober. Perhaps because the grand uncle was here, Jin Ji could control himself because of Sang Liang's smell. Sang Liang asked, "How?" Ning Shu gritted her teeth. Sang Liang must have pulled the grand uncle here to control the situation. However, she also had someone here to control the situation. She just had to throw Jin Ji out. His teeth were very good. Even old rookies like Sang Liang and Tai Shu would be able to chew through them. Ning Shu said, "How do you want to change?" "Let's make it clear first. 20 bottles is impossible." Sang Liang said, 19 bottles. Ning Shu was speechless. "Are you crazy? Since you don't want to talk about it, then don't talk about it. What's the point of doing it again and again? Less than 5 bottles. Do you want to exchange or not? If you don't want to exchange, forget it." Earthworm's chicken stew was ready. It was time to go back and eat the chicken. Who has time to talk to you about such a serious matter? It's better than eating. With a foodie by his side, his appetite was greatly improved. The grand elder said directly, "Then 5 bottles." Sang Liang frowned but didn't say anything. Ning Shu clicked his tongue and said whatever was on his mind. Wasn't it good to be straightforward? If one were to talk about stinginess, he felt that Sang Liang was the stingy one. This was clearly something that didn't cost much. Sang Liang wouldn't have lost so much blood even if he was slightly injured. It was like earning 5 bottles of water for free. In the end, he still wanted to get 10 or 20 bottles. This was simply daydreaming. He was thinking too much. In any case, he wasn't beaten up by society. Sang Liang's life in the organization was smooth sailing. There was probably nothing he couldn't get. That was why he was so angry earlier. Moreover, Ning Shu's previous actions had actually encouraged his arrogance. In the past, whether it was a loss or a gain, she would accept it all. Ning Shu took out 5 bottles of water for Sang Liang, then took the blood and planned to leave. There was no need to talk to these people. The Grand Elder stood up and said to Ning Shu, "Let's go somewhere." Ning Shu refused without thinking. "I want to go home and eat chicken." There was someone at home who was eagerly waiting for her to go home. Earthworm. Not really. And if she went to the same place as the Grand Elder, who knew what he was going to do? Anyway, nothing good was waiting for her. And she had to go back and let Fa Tian absorb the blood. Ning Shu didn't want to care about anything important. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu. "Are you going or not?" Ning Shu, "No." She didn't look at the Grand Elder. Her hair and face were white. If the light was a little brighter, it would be dazzling. How coquettish. Sang Liang said, "You'd better go. This is a big matter in the void." Ning Shu waved her hand. "Then I won't go. I'm just a weak person who can't contribute to the void. Since it's a big matter, I can't bear it." When Sang Liang heard this, the frost that had been condensed earlier had now turned into ice cubes. That kind of unbridled coldness assaulted his face, causing him great discomfort. Ning Shu saw such an aggressive Sang Liang. She didn't know what Ah Sheng had done to make this noble young man break down. "Sang Liang, some people are under the protection of others. It's only right." Ning Shu felt that Sang Liang's resentment was rather heavy. And would someone who was targeted for no reason swallow it? Of course not. Ning Shu immediately chuckled, her face full of mockery. "What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean by under the protection of others? No matter what you do, I don't know." "I don't know, but don't push everything to me." He was too familiar with this trick. Sang Liang liked to suppress righteousness the most. No matter what you did, no one asked you to do it. It was disgusting to force people to pretend to be grateful. Moreover, Ning Shu was still dumbfounded. He didn't understand what had happened. Some people felt too good about themselves. The Grand Uncle gave Sang Liang a look. Sang Liang didn't say anything, but his face froze. Sang Liang was speechless. Ning Shu didn't want to be entangled with them. As for where he was going, Ning Shu wouldn't go. Even if he wanted to go, he would go with the Grand Uncle. Some things could be found out after a slow investigation. Ning Shu brought Jin Ji out of the consultation room and successfully left the organization without encountering any danger. Ning Shu was thinking, is it Senior Uncle who has weakened or I have become stronger? Maybe it was both. This was probably what the upper echelons supported each other while the lower echelons tore at each other. No matter how much they argued, they wouldn't really fight. The ground would shake and both sides would suffer. Ning Shu realized that he had become a person that the Grand Uncle couldn't kill casually. Whether he didn't kill him because he had some value or simply because he wasn't worth killing, he had to consider the consequences. Ning Shu felt that this was a good thing. If it was in the past, killing a weak mission enforcer would be a piece of cake. Was the Grand Uncle wrong in the past? He was probably right. If he was wrong, it was probably because weakness was the original sin. She was too weak. Ning Shu laughed in his heart. She was alone, unlike the Grand Uncle who had to drag such a big family down. He had a lot of things to consider. She and the Grand Uncle would have to fight eventually. Life and death depended on fate. When Ning Shu returned home, he didn't directly pour the blood on the whip. Instead, he handed it to Jin Ji. "Check if there's anything in it that shouldn't be there." Jean Ji poured a drop into her palm. She smelled it first, licked it, and tasted it carefully. Then, she said, "It seems to be fine." Ning Shu said, "It seems to be fine. Are you sure? If there was a problem, Fa Tian would suffer." End of chapter. Chapter 4166. Jean Ji nodded affirmatively. "No problem." Ning Shu said, "Confirm." Jean Ji said, "I should be able to confirm it." Ning Shu was confused. It didn't look very reliable. If Sang Liang had added something to it, it wouldn't have affected the heaven-conquering army. He thought of Fa Tian's broken leg. Last time, he saw Sang Liang bleed, so he shouldn't have done anything. However, it had been a long time. Who knew what was in it? Sang Liang was evil. Ning Shu was really vigilant when facing Sang Liang. Ning Shu closed the bottle and put it aside for a while. Jean Ji looked at Ning Shu and said, "Let Fa Tian out." Ning Shu shook his head. "I want to keep him close to me." Jean Ji looked very unhappy, but he couldn't find a reason for Ning Shu to compromise. It was very uncomfortable that his brain wasn't enough. Jean Ji racked his brains but couldn't think of a way. Every time he encountered a suppression of intelligence, Ning Shu was very happy. "Ha ha ha." Earthworm knocked on the door and said to the two people in the room, "Want to eat chicken?" Ning Shu said, "Yes." After eating chicken, he went to find out what the grand-uncle and the others were talking about. Sang Liang had a look that said, "Your ignorance is detestable, you don't know how to be grateful, you're inhumane." Who knew what they were doing? They usually acted like it was a high-level secret and never let anyone know. In turn, they said that others didn't know how to be grateful. It was especially funny. Jean Ji followed Ning Shu. Fa Tian was probably on Ning Shu, so Jean Ji had no choice but to follow Ning Shu. Earthworm's culinary skills were getting better and better. The chicken soup was rich and the chicken was very delicious. At least, Ning Shu liked it. The smell of fireworks in the human world was the smell of happiness. Ning Shu gave the dessert he brought back from the organization to Earthworm. "Try it. It tastes very good." Earthworm said, "I don't like sweet things." "It's okay. I'll just have a taste. I'll eat the rest." Even if it was not enough, there was still Jean Ji. There was never anything like leftovers. "Earthworm," Ning Shu said to the earthworm, "I'm going out soon. I won't be back for a while. You have to be careful at home. If you need anything, go to the Divine Stone clan." The earthworm asked, "Is there any danger?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I don't know if it's dangerous or not, but we have to figure it out. Cultivate well." After dinner, Ning Shu wanted to get in touch with Shan Yu's father. After all, it had been a while since they last met. But Jean Ji wanted to go with him. Even the Divine Stone race was afraid of Jean Ji's teeth. Bringing him along would definitely cause a commotion among the Divine Stone race. "Wait here for me to come back," Ning Shu said. "Jean Ji, I'll follow you." Ning Shu explained, "I'm going to see the Divine Stone race, if you go, they will feel uncomfortable." Jean Ji reluctantly accepted. "Then come back quickly." Ning Shu suspected that Jean Ji was now treating him as the center of attention. After all, Fa Tian was with her. Ning Shu arrived at the Divine Stone race's territory and realized that there were rows of people sleeping there like small mountains. Snoring sounds came one after another, and all of them were having beautiful dreams. When it came to sleep, Ning Shu felt that the Divine Stone clan slept the most. They spent most of their time sleeping. After all, there was everything in dreams. Ning Shu didn't disturb Shan Yu. It wouldn't be good if he woke him up, so he left after watching for a while. The quantity and quality of sleep was envied by many insomniacs. When he returned, Jinji looked around while eating. She was a living example of a Wanfu stone. When she saw Ning Shu, she heaved a sigh of relief. She looked as if Ning Shu had threatened Fa Tian to escape. Ning Shu was a little curious. How did Fa Tian usually teach Jinji to make her trust Fa Tian so much? In the past, Jinji was a beast with an appetite. She was inhumane and didn't know how to speak or think. This was the result of Fa Tian's education. He put in a lot of effort. It was normal for Jinji to be close to Fa Tian. I want to go out. Jinji immediately said, I'll go with you. Ning Shu, sure. When in danger, Jinji was also a fighting force. Other than eating, Ning Shu didn't see how she fought. He didn't know if Fa Tian taught her how to fight. Jinji's racial talent was probably eating. Ning Shu didn't know what Sang Liang and the others were talking about. He had to find someone who knew. Previously, Mo Ming said that the granduncle was injured and the void was going to be chaotic. It seemed that Mo Ming knew the inside story. Therefore, he had to find Mo Ming. What happened in the void? Anyway, Ning Shu was at a loss. He didn't know what had happened. There was no internet in the void, and it was so big. Who knew what had happened? When he found Mo Ming, he wasn't surprised at all. It seemed that he knew that Ning Shu would come to find him. Ning Shu didn't stand on ceremony and ask directly, what happened in the void? Mo Ming said, probably darkness is coming. There is no day or night in the void, but there is darkness sweeping over and swallowing everything. Ning Shu scratched his head and asked, is it the dark races? Mo Ming, it's darkness, pure darkness. It's like a small world. There is no light at night, so it's very dark. Ning Shu. Then it's coming at night. Is it a big deal? Mo Ming, but this darkness swallows everything. Ning Shu replied, oh, is this the end of the world? Mo Ming, I don't know. Ning Shu, is it spreading fast? Mo Ming said, I don't know. I only know this. I don't know the details. You can ask Granduncle. Granduncle went into the darkness and came out. Oh, so your hair turned white? Ning Shu asked. Mo Ming nodded. Yes. Ning Shu immediately understood. With the Granduncle's strength, he was already old. If ordinary people went in, they would probably die without a complete corpse. Does time flow very fast inside? Ning Shu asked. Mo Ming shook his head. I haven't been in, so I don't know the situation inside. Ning Shu touched his chin and thought. Is there no way to stop it? Mo Ming, no. Light and darkness can't be stopped. Some things couldn't be transferred by human will. So that's what Sang Liang and the Granduncle were talking about. Since the darkness would come as scheduled, why did Sang Liang look like the Granduncle had saved the entire void? Why did he want people to be grateful? If the Granduncle really stopped it, Ning Shu wouldn't mind cheering 3 times. But now, nothing had been solved. And the sky was getting dark. What could he do? In short, Ning Shu didn't care much about this situation. Since death was unavoidable, he could only live well. He couldn't kill himself if he knew that he was going to die sooner or later. And Ning Shu was really used to life and death. Between life and death, death and life. It wasn't a big deal to jump between life and death. Oh, I see. I understand. Only people who had never died would think that this was a big deal. End of chapter. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.